spend a bit more time with the question answer session. But thank you everyone who's joining us today again or for the first time. Today we will be speaking about monitoring, evaluation, and reporting for grants. This is something that is extremely important. And I will be honest, this was something that I didn't really work on initially when I had just started working with fundraising and grant applications. But as times went by and I undertook project management training and I was working a lot more with grant applications, I realized that this is a very core aspect of one of the bigger proposals that we usually develop. I hope everyone had a good time learning yesterday in session 1 and session 2. So we can speak a bit more about this segment of the proposal. And again, I must mention that this segment is usually not present in concept notes, but you will find this relatively more often in bigger what do you call that? Bigger and more comprehensive proposals. Sorry, I lost my word there for a second. Right, so let's first start in understanding what the definitions and differences are. So usually, in short, we call it MEL, which is monitoring, evaluation, learning. So monitoring obviously means ongoing tracking of activities and outputs during implementation. So monitoring starts when we officially start activities of a project, and will always come in a proposal after you have listed all your key activities, your milestones, and everything that you want to achieve. So MEL or anything regarding MEL would come after that segment, so that you can show that how you intend to track these activities and track the outputs while you're doing activities in your project. It also allows the donor to better understand how well you're aware of your limitations and your challenges and how you can mitigate them moving forward. This is where obviously comes evaluation, which is periodic assessment of outcomes and impact relative to objectives. So basically, you will evaluate the challenges that you might face. I'm saying might because, again, this is not project management. This is more like, I mean, theoretically, this is a project management sort of a section, and you need to have a bit of a good hold on project management before you can actually write this. So I would suggest undertaking project management courses online. Google does a very good one, and it's very extensive, so you can look into that. It is paid, but there are other free courses out there as well that can be helpful. So anyway, so evaluation, as I said, comes to see how you might mitigate challenges and what kind of challenges there might be that you are foreseeing. And then learning is using M&E findings to improve future performance. So this is where you essentially analyze your mitigation strategies and how what are the levels of your risk and how you intend to make sure that those risks are taken care of, or are there already actions that you are putting in place so that you don't have to face the risks of a project. And finally, reporting, which is regular documentation and communication of progress to stakeholders. Now, stakeholder here could be your partners, anyone that you're partnering with for your project, or the donor organization in general. Usually, they will, if your proposal gets selected, obviously they will have this document with them, and they will be keeping an eye that if you're following your proposal. And usually they don't appreciate random changes. So it's very important that everything that you're communicating with your stakeholder, with your donor organization, you are putting it in writing and everyone's clear and transparent. Because if you're not transparent when you're reporting anything, it really gives a bad image for you as an organization and as a project manager. Then we have developing an M&E framework. Now, an M&E framework usually may look different depending on the RFP. Now, as I mentioned in the last session as well, that it's very important that you look at the call for proposals or request for proposals. And they will always have, or at least if you're going through 2 rounds, like first you send a concept note and then they ask for a more comprehensive proposal. Either way, they will always mention what they're looking for. So they will obviously ask you something called a risk and mitigation chart, where you basically write the kind of risks that you might face while you are doing the project, the level of the risk happening. For example, I didn't actually mention this here, but I'm saying it on call, and I'll speak slowly so that everyone can write it down or note it down. So the second part would be, once obviously you know what your risks are for that project implementation, then you kind of measure, for example, high, medium, or low. What are the chances of this risk actually happening? Is it high or medium or low? And then you give a mitigation strategy, which is, hey, this is what we are going to do in case risk 1 happens, irrespective of what the level of risk is. And afterwards, we have something called a residual risk, which means that once the mitigation has been placed or has been done, how much will this risk decrease? So what your intention should be, if it's a high risk, then after mitigation strategy is in place, it should be a low risk. So the residual risk should be low. If it's already low, then usually there is no need to put it. So usually what I suggest is only inform them of high and medium risk. And then, as I said, once you have this, so this is one thing, one of the aspects of M&E framework. There could be other aspects of M&E. For example, we will be speaking a bit more about them in the later slides, but this is one of the things that I did not mention in the slide, so I'm just saying it out loud. And building an M&E framework is crucial because obviously it builds transparency, accountability, and adaptability between you as an organization and your donors. The more good rapport you have with them, the easier it will be for you to get funding later on in your project lifecycle or even your institution's lifecycle. Now, sorry, I think I made a mistake with the title here. But what really I wanted to say is that what are the kind of things that you need to mention when you're building an M&E framework. So I really apologize for this. When we send you the presentation, it will be corrected. So I apologize. But anyway, what we are trying to do is, what are the things that you need to mention when you're making an M&E framework? So for example, firstly, you have to write about your goal. Now, this is a long-term change that you want to make with your project. You have outcome, which is a medium-term result. And there's you have output, which is the immediate deliverables and activity project actions, basically. So when we chart it, it usually goes from bottom to the top. So we first write about our activities, then we write about our output, and then outcome and goals. Now, something that was mentioned yesterday by an attendee is that can you actually include goals in a short project? Now, it honestly depends. It's good to have goals, even if it's one, so that you can show that there is a long-term impact from your activities, from your project. But more often than not, it's not required if it's a short project. But even if it's a year-long project, or if it's more than a year long, I always suggest that do write goals in. As I mentioned yesterday, something about theory of change. This is where you kind of chart your activities, your output, outcome, and goals. Now, how many activities you can have, again, it honestly depends on the scope of your project. The more you're asking for, like, for example, if you're asking for a $50,000 grant, it will look different to when you're asking for a $5 million grant. So it really depends. If your ask or if your grant is a really large amount, then obviously the outcome will be a lot larger and the goal will be a lot larger as well. But again, this all have to be realistic. We will talk about it a bit more in the later slides. Now, as I said, key elements of an M&E plan. Now, you might be thinking, what are these? These are like a bunch of things that there's a lot of stuff to M&E, to be honest. It can be a little confusing when you're writing it down, but the more you work on it, the better it gets. So indicators, means of verification, frequency, and responsible parties. These you will find a lot more when you're doing courses or when you're doing project management. I think project managers are better writers when it comes to proposals because they have a better idea on what to write. But either way, honestly, if you're a first timer, it's okay. I'll explain it slowly. So let's go back to the previous slide for a second. So all these four things, which is activity, output, outcome, and goal, you might explain that, oh, like for example, we want to reduce malnutrition rate in a country, or we want to increase exclusive breastfeeding. These are things that you're saying, but they need to see that you will be able to prove it. So it's more like when you're making statements, when you're creating an M&E framework, you also have to back it with how you're going to prove that these things are actually happening. This is where these come in. Indicators, which is metrics. It's like what will indicate that you're actually making an impact or you're having your proposed output or outcome or goal. So, for example, when it comes to decreasing malnutrition rate, you might think, okay, how do I show it? Now, you can show it through surveys. You can have a pre-project survey where you have an idea or you have data to show that, okay, the malnutrition rate is this X much, like X percentage in Z country. But then you have to show, okay, we are going to do like maybe a mid-project survey, we are going to do a post-project survey to show that there has been a decrease. This is a very quantitative way of thinking, surveys. When it comes to qualitative, it could be a little different. Again, it really depends on the project. For example, I think on top of my head, what really comes is education is a bit more qualitative. Um, if you are trying to raise awareness, for example, it becomes more qualitative indicators than quantitative, but it can also be quantitative. I personally like quantitative metrics because it really shows the number of change that you have had, or it shows the impact in numbers, and that's always a better way to show your donors on how. So it's I think, in my opinion, in my experience, it's better to stick with quantitative metrics. And then we have means of verification, which is data collection methods. Again, survey is a form of data collection method. You might have interviews as data collection methods. These are basically to show that, okay, the project intends to have like decrease malnutrition by 15%. We are going to show it by taking surveys or counting nutrition or something like that. So there has to be a means to verify the metric. And then frequency, you have to explain, okay, how many times are you taking this survey? Are you taking this every week, every month? Are you doing this biannually? Again, it really depends on the scope of the project and what you have in mind and what impact you're trying to make. So it will depend on that. And then responsible parties, this is where you explain that, okay, who are the people who are responsible for ensuring that the indicators are being met, that they're being verified, and they are only working with M&E. So usually you may have M&E staff, you might have partners, you might have field teams, and you have to explain all of that who will be responsible, what will be their roles, and all of that. Then obviously choosing good indicators, which is called CREAM. I don't really like the acronym of it, but it is what it is. So firstly, it's clear, which means it's easy to understand. There's no jargons. It's simple and straightforward. Relevant. It has to be directly linked to the objective, which means it has to be directly linked to the output or outcome that you're trying to make. Economical. Whatever that you're trying to do, if you're trying to acquire the data, it has to be affordable and feasible to collect. Ethical, of course, respecting dignity and privacy. This is extremely important. And then you have attainable, realistic, as I said earlier, that has to be a realistic measure and measurable, objectively verifiable. Now, you might think that, you know, like realistically measurable and objectively verifiable, they seem the same. Yes, to an extent they are, but I think what they really mean to say is that it has to be realistic and that you're going to be able to verify it. So M&E has to be very clear. You have to make it straightforward. You have to make it precise. There is no point in adding more words just for the sake of it. It's important that you don't make it complex. Then you have types of indicators. As I said, for input, you can show the resource that were used, for example, the funding that was dispersed. Then you have output, which is the immediate result. If you're training people, that you will see immediate result of them learning something. You can, for example, take tests to see what their like immediate result was. Like when you train a group of people regarding anything, especially in capacity building projects, the output is quite immediate. You can take tests and you will have an answer how much they have learned. And then you have outcome, which is, like, okay, how many of them have used their training in their work, for example. So in that way, you might have to take a survey maybe after 3 months or 6 months to see how many of these people have used the trainings learning in their work life or whatever that you train them on. I think one of the easiest way to show this is in agricultural projects. I worked in agriculture based funding for a very long time, for almost like a year. So we worked with a lot of smallholder farmers in Kenya, and there was a lot of training regarding different types of farming methods, and obviously the training was used as an output or as an indicator, and we would be like, oh, we are training 300 farmers. But the way to see the outcome is that we went back to them after 6 months, and we would be asking them questions about, oh, have you shared your knowledge with anyone? How have you used your training? What did you do differently? Did you buy anything differently? So it's just, a lot of asking questions to kind of understand that if the training was adapted or not. And then you have impact, for example, long-term change. So in my example, you can think, okay, what is the long-term change? Long-term change could be that the cost of farming might decrease, their income might increase. So maybe you will see this reduction of cost and increase in income in maybe a year. So you have to tell the donors that, okay, after a year we will take another survey, assuming that there has been an increase in income. Because what they really want to see is that the project is not just short-lived, that there is a long-term impact to it. I think that's what makes a good project. So that's what they want to see on your proposal. Then you have as a data collection and management, which is what kind of tools that you can use. Quantitative, you can use surveys and baseline and endline studies and data. For qualitative, you can do key KIIs. I forgot the full form of it, but it was, I think, key informant interviews. So you can take interviews, you can do focus group discussions, you can do case studies. So again, I think personally, I prefer quantitative more. But then again, honestly, if you're doing a research project, it will look very different. If you're doing a research project, maybe qualitative is the way to go and not quantitative. Then you have principles, which are timeliness, accuracy, completeness, and confidentiality. It's very important that you time them right. So you need to really understand when is the right time to take a survey or do like a baseline or endline survey. It has to be accurate, so you cannot skew your data. It has to be complete, which means that your questions should be able to portray the whole facet of the project and not just one particular part of it. And confidentiality is basically, if you're doing something, any project maybe in war zones, you have to make sure when you're taking interviews or when you're doing surveys that they are safe and that for ethical reasons their names and their data is not being used. And even if they are, the beneficiaries must know what you're using their data for. Finally, then you have reporting to donors, which is basically the type of reports that you might have. Now, this is indicated in the proposal as well, how you intend to report to the donors. You can give them inception. Inception basically means like when you start, so kind of report in the beginning on what you want to do or what you intend to do after the project starts, if like just like formality based basically. Then you have progress, which is how the project is progressing, will it be quarterly or annually. And then you can have MEL results, financial final. So again, this will be spoken about in your contract, and you can obviously create it by yourself. And you can tell them that the best way forward is that we give you a progress report every 3 months or something like that. So it really depends on your project and who your donors are and what they require. If you are confused about it, please email them and ask them what they're looking for, what is the best way forward for them. And then you have good reports elements. What makes a good report? Obviously, it's a clear structure. There should be tables and visuals, nothing too complicated, something precise, linked to objectives and indicators, use of beneficiary quotes and stories. Now, it's important. This is where, again, this is, I think, in a bit more of a post accepting the proposal kind of way, but this is just, I'm just letting you all know in case you get a grant and you have to write reports for your M&E and just reporting to your donors. It's important that you have a clear idea about this. Then we have using MEL for learning and adaptation. So basically, I think I've honestly already mentioned this before, about risk management and mitigation strategies, but this is basically it in a bit more of a fancy term. Is that how are you going to learn about these? So do you pause and reflect? Do you talk to people on field? Do you talk to your members? Your after action reviews, learning briefs, adaptive management, all of this again is very, once you're already doing the project, this is where it comes to being. So I think a lot of the times we forget that grant writing is not just limited to grant writing, but also having like a foresight to how you're going to manage these things, and making sure that you portray that you are going to be able to have sessions with your team members, sessions with people that are working on the field for you, how you're going to act upon it, if there are any risks at all that you don't see. So you just have to mention all of these in a proposal. Now you might be thinking, how do you write all of this? Like, how do you make sure? Now, to be honest, one of the bigger projects that I did, which did have around £500,000 as the grant, they had questions. So they had segments and questions. There is a format that they send you most of the time, so you don't have to start from scratch. In most grants, they will have a format already. You just have to follow them. Whatever the questions that they have, you just have to answer them and make sure that you make it as comprehensive as possible and make it as detailed as possible, but not using too many unnecessary words. A lot of people are using AI these days and ChatGPT to write their proposals. Honestly, people who work in fundraising, we do see it, we do understand, we can read that it was done by an AI because it's very generalized. So you have to make sure that you, even if you're using AI or ChatGPT, which I'm not against of, please make sure that you humanize it. You can use it as like a framework and then write it yourself, but don't just copy paste it, because if you do, they will know and you will get rejected. So I actually wanted to talk about the sustainability plan because I know yesterday a few people had a few questions regarding it. So I just wanted to make sure that you have a bit more of a clearer idea on what the sustainability plan looks like or might look like, because this is again, this usually comes at the very end of a proposal, they will ask you how you intend to ensure that the project sustains and doesn't end because the grant or funding ended. So you do have to outline how the project's impact, benefits, and activities will continue after donor funding ends, as I mentioned. And the basic goal of sustainability plan is just to maintain key outcomes, strengthen local ownership, ensure long-term resource mobilization, and building institutional capacity. Now, these might seem like very fancy words, but the easiest way to say this, or the simplest way to say this, is that you basically ensure that whatever impact or outcome that you're trying to do is for the long run, and it doesn't end with the donor funding. You have to make sure that you are involving the communities that you're working with, and they're not left behind after the project loses its funding from the donor or it comes to an end. And long-term resource mobilization, again, this means that you are making sure that whatever resources that you have enough of them to carry on for a long time. So you will obviously hear this in the budget already. A lot of the time, a lot of the amounts that we use are a little exaggerated because you do have to consider exchange rates, you have to consider inflation and everything. So it's okay to exaggerate a little bit when it comes, maybe 5 to 10% more than the actual number. Now, this is very arbitrary. This is not written in stone. I don't have the best answer on how much you should exaggerate, but just keep it realistic if it's too much, because they will, I won't say ask around, but they have enough knowledge to know if you've exaggerated a number too much or not. And by number, I mean a price or an expense. And then institutional capacity, again, you have to show that your organization will be able to carry on the project for a very long time, because you do have the operational capacity for it. Now, then you have key components of a sustainability plan. Again, the N was missing. I'm sorry about that, so I'll add it. But anyway, the key components, as I already mentioned, institutional sustainability, which means you have to ensure that you have local partners, that you're integrating the project in existing systems. They're quite basic, quite self-explanatory. Then you have financial sustainability. Again, you have to show how you're going to ensure that the project runs for a very long time. Do you have the finances for it? You can mention that I do need finances in the future. I intend to reapply for donors, or at least you have to show that there's some kind of income generation plan that you have to ensure that the project lasts. And then you have technical sustainability. This is, again, you training local staff, community members, your staff. These, and there has to be like manuals and tools that can be replicated by your organization in the future. And in policy sustainability, a lot of the times you will see there are a lot of advocacy plans. So if you're trying to make, for example, a change, okay, for example, in a lot of the smallholder farmers that we were working with, we would always have this aspect of advocacy. We would explain to them that, yes, we want to make sure that the training is subsidized by the local authorities, that whoever from the local authorities used to train the farmers or are involved in kind of generating knowledge. It is infiltrated into it, like it is implemented within the local system. That's how it becomes like a generalized thing and not just a project-based thing. So this is, like, again, an aspect to it. This is very dependent on the type of project that you're doing. It's not based on there's no one size fits all situation. It really will depend on your proposal and your project. Now, capacity building, partnerships, knowledge transfer, and exit strategy. All of these are very good ways to show how you would intend to sustain. So you can show one way that, okay, you're going to continue mentorship or training of local actors who can then train others. And, it's kind of like a butterfly effect or a domino effect. Then you can show partnerships. This is where you are collaborating with the government or the private sectors. These will help you to carry on like with resource mobilization, and this will help you carry on the project in general. And knowledge transfers, this is again, if you are creating some kind of toolkit or manual, this should be available online. So there should be like a dissemination plan, especially for research projects. There has to be a dissemination of the research so that it can be replicated by others with similar situations or anything on the line of that. And an exit strategy, I think this is again not relevant in a lot of proposals. I didn't see it in many proposals. I think from all the proposals that I've worked with in my life so far, or grant applications that I've worked so far, I've only gotten one or two where they will ask you of an exit strategy where you stop working on the project, but the project kind of works by itself because you have kind of implemented it with other partners or in your community in a way that it sustains itself. So this is usually not that frequent, but again, if you want to add it, why not? Then you have the post project check ins, sustainability indicators, and feedback loops. Again, this will depend on how comprehensive your proposal is, if they're asking for it or not. Usually, I didn't see it a lot, but post project check ins, they will ask it in M&E mostly. Where you have to show that, okay, after the project ends, we will go after, like as I mentioned, 6 months later, you take another survey of farmers to see if there was income increase in their for their training because of the training or something. So you can add that in your M&E. And then sustainability indicators is basically just to show how many of the trained personnel or how many people you expect that will be active or will be using whatever that you're doing. And then feedback loop. Again, this is something that's not very common, but it's okay if you want to include it, which is learning from ongoing implementation for future planning, basically to be able to replicate and and you should have like kind of like a chain where people can come and speak to you about anything regarding the project, especially the beneficiaries. So that's about it. I hope I covered most of the things. If I haven't, hopefully we will be able to cover it in the next training that we will have. Conflict Lab intends to continue this, continue the good work. And I will ask everyone to kind of leave their questions in the chat box so that I can answer them and get back to you. Okay, so could you explain the acronyms of MIS, FGDs, and KIIs? Right, FGDs is focused group discussions. This is kind of like a round table where you bring in a lot of experts or people who are very active in the field, and you sit them down and you talk and raise awareness. I think this happens more so in capacity building projects or where you're trying, or in advocacy projects where you're trying to raise awareness in the policymaking levels. And then you have KIIs, as I said, key informant interviews. These are like very individuals that you pick who are representatives. Now, this can be like village heads or I don't know, a representative from a community who can give you like an understanding of what's happening. Actually, I forgot the full form of MIS, so I will be googling it and letting you know in a bit. But I'll just go into the next question. I don't shy away from saying when I don't know something, so I'll just get back to you, Lucero, in a little bit. And then you have someone asked, I think Ikale. I'm sorry if I'm ruining your name, but difference among planning, M&E, and initiatives in organization work. So I mean, if I have to go by the question itself, planning is just project planning. Your planning is the whole of it, like from start to finish, from the resources that you need, the M&E plan, the partners that you require, the budget, all of it is just planning. And M&E is just a part of planning, which is monitoring and evaluation, where you are literally just talking about how you're going to monitor the progress, how will you evaluate the progress, and if there are challenges, how are you going to mitigate them, and how you're going to learn from your mistakes. And initiatives, I'm not exactly sure how to explain this, because I'm not familiar with the, like, in what context you mean initiative. So I would like it if you just kind of reframe the question for initiatives. And I'll wait for other question. So MIS is actually it's management information system. It's not exactly like, it's a part of M&E, but not really. So it's basically kind of like a system where you manage and analyze information. Usually MIS goes hand in hand with like applications, so you can use applications of MIS to kind of use it for your M&E. So I hope that answers your question a bit. So MIS is like a system. Yeah, sorry.
Hello, can I talk?
Yes, of course.
Or maybe to clarify, I was in an interview. I was asked, are you good in planning, monitoring, and evaluation, or taking initiatives? Maybe initiatives in an individual level in an organization. Yeah.
Am I good in it, or I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Let me clarify it. I was in an interview. I was asked in terms of projects, are you good in planning, monitoring, and evaluation, or taking initiatives? Taking initiatives, maybe in an individual
Myself,
level.
just
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I think I am better. I think it really depends on what my role is in that particular organization. Because if you're planning a project, you are working with the M&E team. But if you're working in M&E team, you're working with the planning project or like the project manager. I've worked as project manager in the past where my basic work was planning. But also when I was working on grant applications, I was also working on M&E because it's kind of part of the thing, and initiatives. Yes, I used to initiate projects 2.5 years ago in the role that I was in. But right now, I think my initiatives in an institution looks very different than how it used to look like back in the day. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Then we have, and I hope that I was able to explain MIS to Lucero. I'm not sure if I could, but if you have like a follow-up question, please just write it in the chat box. Okay, then we have Nashiba, who asked, how does the standard indicator tracking table look like? So you know what, I wish I was able to show it to you right now, but they will usually give you a tracking table. I have seen it in some proposals. Again, the more comprehensive ones usually have their own table. And what it usually looks like is that you have activities, and then you indicate what kind of outcome or impact that you want to make. For example, the most easiest example is training people. Okay, so you want to train people, so that's your activity to train. For example, train smallholder farmers in mixed farming. Okay, that's your activity. Then you can say one of the indicators would be, we want to train 300 smart 300 farmers. That will be one indicator. Now then you can indicate, then you can say that in order to understand if the training worked or not, we will be taking baseline surveys, which will show me what kind of knowledge the farmers already have. And then we are going to do a post training survey, which will show us how much they have learned. So this could be like a way, and you can mention that we expect 60% of the farmers to be able to clearly identify their learning. And then you can, so it's kind of like that. Like, I hope I was able to explain how this indicator table could look like, but basically it comes from activities. I think the easy, again, I think I could give you like an idea about it a bit more in terms of right. So this is literally what it would sort of look like. It might have different names, but input is the activity that you're doing. Output is the immediate result. For example, yes, we're training 300 people, 300 smallholder farmers. That's your output. The immediate output that you're training 300 people. And outcome is we are we will use surveys, post pre training survey and post training survey to show that 60% or 50% of the farmers had learned it. And you can also additionally show that it kind of, again, it could be a long-term change, it could be a short-term change, depends on what the duration of your project is. But if it's a shorter project, your impact would be that 40% of them are using the training materials in their to like do their farming. Or if it's a long-term impact, again, you will have a few more steps, a few more activities. So when we send you these presentations, I think you can I will also try and send the table and what I have already. I'm not sure how much I can, because I do have an NDA from my previous work, that I can't really share information for a while, but I will try and find it online for everyone. Let me see if I can find it right now and then kind of show it to you. Well, these are all like very scientific. So yeah, I think we'll have to wait till we can send all the presentation to you, and I'll try and add that in so that everyone can see how it could look like. Anything else? Anyone else? Please just unmute yourself and ask, or just leave a question. Feel free to raise your hand as well. I feel like I did have a lot of people saying yesterday that they had a really good time. It was clear and coherent information. I hope it was the same today, but please don't be shy in asking questions. There's no stupid questions. Everything is fair, especially for people who have never worked on grant applications before and want to work on it. Well, if there's nothing else, then I can wrap up, I think. Romaric, you have the floor, I suppose. Okay, I just got another question. Sorry, Romaric. So we have a question about ethics and power, which is how do power dynamics between donors, implementers, and beneficiaries affect what gets measured and how data is interpreted? That's a very good question, actually. Usually the donors will not interfere in your work, which means that in your project proposal, whatever that you write, they're usually the ones they're going to be fine with it. If an organization, if a donor organization is trying to change things in your project, then that's not usually a good sign. But as far as I'm aware, the major donors who provide the funding in phases, for example, what they really care about is the impact and the outcome rather than like your activities. They will not suggest anything to you, but if you're deviating from your impact or your outcome or whatever activities that you said you were going to do and you're not doing, then they will have an issue with it. In terms of implementers and beneficiaries, I think by implementers, I'm assuming that you're meaning the organization who's applying for the funding. So I think this is, again, very important in the way that you have to make sure if there would be any cases where power might be misused, you know. For example, a lot of the projects that work with women and children, there's always uh, that aspect of power, especially if you have males in your team and men are actively working in the field with women or women beneficiaries or children beneficiaries, then you have to make like a point to ensure, and you have to mention it in the risk and mitigation strategy table as well, that there might be a risk where there could be sexual harassment or an imbalance of power, and you have to mention how you're going to be able to um, sort that out. So you have to, for example, one of the mitigation strategy for this kind of cases could be that you provide sexual harassment and assault training to your employees or anyone who's going to work in the field. Um, so I think it really that's what I think that's what it is. It's more so about the institution and the beneficiaries rather than the donors and the organization. I think this is, again, it will really depend on the project, and you have to be aware of these power dynamics and include them in your risk and mitigation strategies for sure. I think that was a very good question. And there was another one. I think it depends on the donor. There are donors that do intervene a lot in the project design and logic framework, even indicators. Yes, that is true. That is true. I've seen them more so in research projects in my life, to be honest. Personally, I have seen that, but more than donors, I think I've seen them more so in partners. So something that I mentioned yesterday is that if you're, for example, applying for a funding from GIZ, you should be able to get a partner from European Union or Germany. That increases your chance of getting uh, funding. That is true, but also you have to be very careful on who you partner with, because partners, a lot of the times, these bigger Western partners will a lot of the times kind of um, intervene a lot in the project design and just indicators and everything. But yes, if you have donors who do that, I don't think that's a really good thing, and working with them can be very difficult. Um, and honestly, I think the best way to deal with this is to speak during when you're signing a contract, because you will be signing a contract even before they send you money. Go through the contract, add um, whatever like needs to be added in a contract. It's not it will be set in stone once you sign it, but before that, add whatever you think is necessary. I think that way you can really kind of ensure that there is not much of an intervention. I hope that answers that kind of explains Lucero's again, I'm really sorry if I'm butchering your name. You look like a lovely girl. It's just I'm really confused on how to say your name. We have Suad, who said, who decides what success looks like in monitoring and evaluation? How do power and relations influence? I think I already mentioned the power and relations stuff, but as for who decides it, I think it's just you. Whoever is writing, who's the project lead, the team that writes the grant application, you will have to be the one to decide what success looks like, because you have to understand this: the donors don't know the actual situation where you're working. They don't. They might say that they do, but they don't, because you are where you are and you have a better idea than they have. But I think it's because they're working with donations and fundraising and just projects like this for a very, very long time. They usually have an idea, and they usually have connections as well, all over the world more often than not, to kind of understand if that is realistic or not, if whatever indicators or success metric that you're putting for your project. So yeah. Theory, yes, you have an intriguing question on ethics. So I will be waiting. I think we have 5 more minutes. So any more questions if anyone else has. Theory, I think, has a very intriguing question, which I am finding intriguing now because I'm still waiting on it. So, yes, I will not worry about your pronunciation. It's just, in the UK, people butcher my name all the time. So I just know the pain of it. And I try not to be, too mean about it, but it is a lot. Any other questions? Theory, I think you can just turn on your microphone and just say it online. Like, you don't have to write. If it's a big question, you don't have to type it. Just unmute yourself. Oh my god. I'm so sorry, guys, about that. It's my mom calling. Theory, are you I don't think we have a lot of time. We have like 3 minutes left.
Please, if you have questions, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask Riza your questions.
Yes, please. If not, I think we'll just have to move on. Or you can just, find me on LinkedIn. Text me with your question. Maybe I can get back to you. Or you can email us on our email. I'm sure Romaric will share it with you before the session ends. And you can email there as well. And, I can look at it and answer to you. But I think Romaric, I think we're done. So please, you have the floor.
Hello, Romaric, are you there? Romaric, are you there? If you're talking, your mic is muted. Okay. Riza, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Good evening once more, everyone. From this end, God's will. And Riza, we appreciate you once more for such an elaborate delivery. And I think just as I did, the rest of the team here on board equally found it very, very insightful. And hopefully moving forward, it will have a lot to play as far as the effectiveness and quality of different projects proposal across our respective corners in our efforts to amplify the work we do at our various communities. I think it will go a long way to make that better. Thank you very much, Riza, for dedicating this time. Yeah, so we would recess for a 5 minute break before we transition into the last phase of this training, which will be centered around budgeting. I think most of the times budgeting is not really a friendly topic of discussion. Since it's always kind of very complicated, since we have our minds packed already with the so much Riser has delivered to us this evening. It's just very proper that we take about 5 minutes of recession and then we come in back here. This is I want to assume this is 8 o'clock. So by 5 minutes past 8, we'll reconvene here using the same link for the next part of this training, and that will be chaired by Mr. Ngoni. Ngoni, just to confirm, are you there and active enough?
Thank you, Godro. I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ngoni. So please, everyone, you can just be muted, or probably you can take your some few minutes to probably relax, and 5 minutes we pick it up from there. Okay, yeah, so I think this is 5 minutes and we should have refreshed enough. Ngoni, can you still confirm if you are able to hear us and communicate clearly? Hello, Ngoni. If you're, yes, Ngoni, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you.
I was trying to share my screen.
Okay, if you're having any challenges doing so, can you send it across to me so I share it from here?
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just send it through.
Okay, no problem. Hello, everyone. We apologize for that. In a few minutes' time, Ngoni will be up and running. So please, let's just spare him some few minutes. Thank you all.
While we are waiting for Ngoni to come on with his presentation, I just want to remind everyone that you will receive certificates for this training at the end of it for those who attended the yesterday session and today's session. And we'll also fill the post-training survey that will be distributed or sent to you via email. You're gonna receive those the post survey questions via your email latest, let's say by Friday. You'll receive them via email. So those will take time to fill out those surveys. I think 2 weeks after that, you're gonna get your certificates that will be sent to you via email. So once we are done today, by Friday you'll receive those. By Friday you will receive those survey questions. Okay, so Ngoni's presentation is available. Let's move on. Godwill, can Ngoni start already?
Yes, Romaric is free to. Ngoni, can you hear us? If you're talking, please kindly unmute yourself.
Yeah, Ngoni, if you're speaking, you're okay. Perfect. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. My name is Ngonjema. I'm a programs assistant for the Conflict Lab. And my task today is to present and go through the topic of budgeting and compliance for grant writing. The objectives that follows under this topic, the number one objective is to develop an aligned and donor compliant project budget. The second objective is to write a clear and justifiable budget narrative, and then to understanding donor and international financial compliance. So basically, taking it from previous presenters, I've liked the example of building a house that was given yesterday by the president of session 2. She mentioned that with grant writing, we are kind of building a house where we'll start with the foundation, then the brickwork, the roof, and I think with the budget and compliance, we can term it to be the ceiling or the last part of the grant writing. We have laid down the ground, we've laid down all the project necessities that we need, but there is the components of budgeting that is very crucial for each and every grant writing. So budgeting, a budget by definition is a financial plan that outlines an organization's projected income and expenses over a specific period, typically a year, maybe a year, 5 years, 10 years or so. A budget usually serves as a roadmap for managing financial resources and making informed decisions to achieve the organizational goal. Taking it back to the previous presenter for session 3, she was talking about activities, goals, outcomes, outputs, and the purpose of the project. If we are to look on the log frame, the logical framework, before activities we have got inputs, but those inputs they need to be financed, so they are financed through the budget. However, for budget writing, we need to be compliant to the donor and the organization's requirements. The donor relationship that was being discussed before, whether to see the donor, the powers between the donor and the grant recipient, usually with in the African context, basically the Southern African part. I don't think it's a good practice that we are going about, where the donor seems to have more powers than the implementing organizations, where we get our budget being dictated by the donor for a certain project, which usually makes such project to divorce from the organizational strategic planning mandate and mission. However, we are not going to touch much on that. Let me get directly into the presentation of today by way of introduction. So effective budgeting and compliance, they are very critical for the sustainability of the organization as well as the project being funded or the grant that we are writing to solicit for finances. I need you colleagues to take note on this one, that when we are writing a budget, yes, we are writing it for a specific grant, but it should not divorce from the organization's mandate and strategic plan. Our budget should align with the organization's mandate so that after implementing the project, if the grant is awarded to us, we can be able to continue to see the organization continue even without the same grant. So budgeting and compliance are very critical for the sustainability of an organization. So compliance is not only complying to the donor demands or needs, but also complying with the organization needs and expectations. Moving on, there are principles of a good budgeting. Principles being the rules and laws laid down for budgeting. Number one principle is accuracy. When we are talking about accuracy, we are talking about the data accuracy and projections for proposals. When we are doing a budget or when we are budgeting, we need to be very accurate with our figures. We need there is a need for meticulous attention to details. We need to pay attention so that the donor will see that thorough work was done and we don't miss any figures. If we don't do a thorough look on our figures, sometimes we tend to over budget or to under budget for a certain project, which will make the project unimplementable or can result in our project being a proposal being taken down because of our figures. And sometimes if you fail to be accurate, our figures tend not to have a meaning. All the information on the budget can be distorted just by missing one figure. So we need to be very attentive and pay more attention to details when we are budgeting. We need to scrutinize our numbers, our figures, so that we don't make confusion to the donors or to the grant award. So strategies for making sure that accuracy in the proposal budgeting is there. Number one, we can fail to be accurate by giving distorting marketing price. For example, if you budget for certain equipments using the wrong price in the market, you can end up not being able to buy such equipment if you under budget, or you can end up raising donor suspicion if you are overcharging. So there is need for a thorough market research and cost analysis when you are doing budgeting for personnel, equipment, material, and other projected related expenses to the projects. Over and above, there is also issue of historical data and financial records. Taking it for example, the organization that is writing a grant proposal, it's not its first time. So it means they have got historical data and financial records that they can make reference to in terms of budgeting to see the trends on figures and what they've been doing before. So it is very important that when you are budgeting, you need to do a thorough marketing research so that you don't overstate figures or understate. It will distort the whole budget. More so, there's an issue of a rigorous budget review process. Budget writing for grant awarding purposes. It's not a one-time thing. You need to go through very thorough on the budget to review it, uh, having the budget being cross-checked by the finance team, the experts. You can even hire a consultant to help in analyzing and relook into your budget so that you avoid unnecessary mistakes or being inaccurate with the information on your budget. With the coming of technology, also utilizing specialized budget software or templates, taking into consideration that some of the donors, they give you a budget template that they need, which you just fill in according to their budgeting. So you need just to use those templates or using other software that can help you to come up with a budget that is clear and concise. After accuracy, another principle is alignment. So the budget should align with the organizational goal and the priorities of the donor. Basically, when we say the budget should align with the organizational goal and priorities, we are trying to say the grant that you are applying for is not going to exist in a vacuum. It is going to be implemented by an organization that already exists. So, by so doing, you have to make sure that your proposed budget is fitting into the organization's objectives and overall strategic planning of the budget so that the mission and the mandate of the organization won't be diverted. Sadly, to mention, with the current trend of difficulties in securing grants, many organizations, they are now tending to divert from their mandate and goals just for the sake of trying to secure a grant. They are now ignoring the organizational strategic planning and objectives and just try and align with lean with the donor requirements, which is very wrong, because after you've implemented that grant, you still need to exist. So you cannot be an organization that exists because of grants. What if you fail to secure a grant? Are you going to cease to exist? It's a bone of condition. Then, in ensuring proposal budgetary decision supports the mission of the organization, each and every budget item and allocation within the proposal should be carefully evaluated based on its ability to contribute to the organizational priorities and outcomes that are desired by the organization. So we are saying on our budget, there are items which are there, which we need to allocate funds. And when allocating those items funds, we need to allocate them taking into consideration the priorities of the organizations and the desired outcomes. Adding to that, The issue of evaluation process should consider the proposed project and its associated cost aligning with the organization's core competence, existing resources, and strategic initiative. So we are saying, as we are reviewing our budget, we need to take cognizance that we have got an organization that already exists. So whatever we are reviewing, whatever we are evaluating, should align with the organization's core competencies and the existing resources and strategic activities. Taking for instance, if we have got an open budget for an existing organization, let's say we have got our motor vehicle as an asset. So if we are planning or if we are allocating a budget line to buy motor vehicles, we should take into cognizance that we have got already existing vehicles. So if we are to allocate, it will be just a beefing up, or we will be allocating according to the needs of that budget. What type of vehicle do we want to purchase? Then, in terms of maintaining the capacity of the organization, we need to demonstrate that effective management is proposed so that it can deliver outcomes. Also, to strengthen the existing organization. So basically, with the principles of budgeting, we are saying they should marry to the organizational mandate, mission, and vision. They should not be divorced. Then strategies that we can use to align the proposal budget with the organizational goal and priorities. We need to conduct a strategic review. The strategic review will give us the organization's current plan. What is it that the organization have in plan already? What are the priorities? What are the resources that the organization holds? What are the areas of alignment and potential synergies with the proposed budget? So it's a strategy that we can use to align our budget with the organization. We need to conduct a strategic review. Also, we you have to ensure that the proposed project objectives, scope, and the budget allocations support or complement the organization's overall strategic direction. So we are saying with the grand budget that we are writing, it should come to fit into the scope and the budget of the organization that already exists. More to that, as a way of strategy to align, there is need for stakeholder engagement. We need to engage with stakeholders of the projects, the proposed projects, and the existing organization that is seeking for the grants. For example, the programs manager, finance professionals, senior leadership, they need to be involved in the process of budgeting. We need to get inputs and insight from those stakeholders so that we make sure our budget is in line with the organizational strategy. Another key principle is clarity. Clarity is very important when it comes to transparency and accountability. So whenever we are writing a budget for grant proposal, we need to be very clear. We need to have clarity and transparent so that the decision-making process by the donors will foster trust in amongst the stakeholders, including those who will be implementing the grants. So basically, with the clarity, we are trying to inculcate transparent and accountability so that we build trust with the stakeholders. If there's no trust, no one would dare give you his or her money. So basically, it means our proposal will fail. So with clarity, we ensure that there's trust with the stakeholders. Then the issue with communication, we need to communicate the budget effectively to stakeholders. We need to provide stakeholders with a well-structured and easily understandable budget. So basically, we are saying with the budget, we need to structure it in a way that it is very easy to understand. Like what I was saying before, we don't need, and we don't want to confuse the donors. We need to be very clear and communicate uh, clearly to the stakeholders. So that's all about clarity. Then budget items. Basically, with the budget, they are what we call direct costs. These are costs that are directly affected or directly linked to the budget. Uh, for example, we can talk of salaries, materials, equipment that are going to be used for that particular project that we are writing a grant for. So, with the direct costs, we need to be very precise and do cost estimation that will make sure we can be able to implement um, the project without any discrepancies. So it is very important to come up with close estimations uh, based on the market research for the cost of for the direct cost of a project. We need to have those ones very clear and precise, speaking to the timeline, scope, and cost of the project. Otherwise, if we fail to come up with those costs, then it means that we may fail to implement or we may fail to yield results as expected. Maybe because we could have under budgeted, or if we changed over budget, then the donors may be frustrated to the tune of that they will say, no, we are doing away with these organizations, they are not faithful. So basically, we have to foster trust through budgets. Then there are indirect costs. For example, the overhead expenses, the utilities, admin expenses. These are the expensive, like what I've been mentioning before. We have got an existing organization that is applying for a grant. So the existing organizations get already or is already incurring some costs to the tune of utilities, there are administrative expenses, overhead of running an institution. So when we are budgeting, these someone, sorry, someone's mic is making noise. Can please the mic be muted? Thank you. So I was talking about the indirect cost, the need for the indirect cost to be factored in, so that when we are implementing, we don't get divorced to the existing organization and focus only to one project. So it is very important that we have to factor in those indirect costs. It will save the organization. Moving on, there are also what we call restricted costs. Some of the donors, they don't have what we call free funds. They are some items that they cannot pay for. If you tend to use their money on those items, it can be a disallowable. But however, we have got some grant awards that have got free funds and they don't have restricted costs. But with grants that have got restricted costs, you do not need to spend on those costs. You need to go by the donor's specifications and designated do what the funds has been raised for, strictly for that only, without paying for the restricted costs. It also helps in strengthening the relationship and foster trust with the donor. But if you tend to use the money otherwise for the restricted costs, you will be killing your reputation for future grants. Because usually what the donors do, they request for your audited reports and previous financial reports, and it will be reflected in those reports that you once misused or you once used the donor money for a restricted cost. So we have to avoid that by all costs. So you also need to go through the terms of reference and the contracts, if there is any, or the grant, the call for proposal. There will be terms and reference there. So you need to read them and understand them clearly, so that when you are working on your budget, you are doing exactly what the donor is asked you to do, and trying to marry it with the organization see strategic activities. Then coming to the budget development and narrative writing. So there are steps that you have to follow when you are developing a budget. The first thing is to identify the budget drivers. If you have identified the budget drivers, you then need to analyze the historical data of the organization. Then you do forecasting for the future trends. After focusing on the future trends, you also need to consider the organizational priorities and determining the key factors that influence that budget. So that's the first step. You have to identify the budget drivers. Then, secondly, estimating cost and revenue. When you are developing your budget, you have to come up with estimates. This one will also speak to issue of market research, also analyzing the historical data, and you have input from the experts about the market prices when you are estimating your costs. So basically, like what I've shared before on the issue of accuracy, you need to do a rigorous market search for information about the cost that you want to estimate. Your estimate should be closer to the real market price. The previous presenter was talking about overstating with a certain percentage, which is very much allowable by the donors. There is a certain percentage that they consider to be acceptable when you are dealing with the budgeting. When you are doing budgeting, they allow for a certain percentage that you cannot go above when you're doing your cost estimates. So after you've done the cost estimate, you need to finalize the budget. How do you finalize the budget? You have to do the budget review holistically, making necessary adjustments and ensuring that the budget is aligning with the organizational goal and compliance. So if you see and check the trends here, the issue of making the budget aligned with the organizational goal and compliance with the requirements is continuously recurring in the process of developing a budget, which means that it is a very important factor to consider when you are doing budget. You don't need to come up with a budget that is divorced to the organization that is going to implement that project. Moving on, there's also what we call narrative writing. After we've done our budget in figures, we need to have a narrative budget that now speaks and explains to the figures. Sometimes the numbers tend to be vague. If you just have got numbers that doesn't have narration, they tend not to have a meaning. So what basically it means for budgeting, we have got two sections, the quantitative and the qualitative. On the quantitative, that's where we are stating and having figures. And on qualitative, we are now explaining those figures to the donor and stakeholders. They need to have an explanation. So the narrative writing is very important, as well as the quantitative budget. You need to explain your figures. It serves as a communication tool by providing the context of those figures and justifying your numbers. By so doing, you are making it very transparent to the decision makers on that budget. So that's it about narrative writing. It's a follow-up to explain the context, to justify and make it clear to the decision makers on the quantitative budgeting that usually contains numbers only. After the narrative writing, we move on to donor compliance in terms of formats and the reporting requirements. Coming back to the donor compliance, like what I've mentioned before, with some donors that issue out call for proposals, most of them they've got templates. So if you have got a template that you have been given by a donor, basically you need to follow that template. You need to comply with the template when you are constructing your budget. That template will be a guideline to the donor's requirements. So you need to be familiar with what each and every donor require. Basically, the templates might be more or less similar, but they are not generic. So you have to familiarize yourself with each and every donor's requirements on a template, including the issues to do with the submission deadlines and documentation standards. So if you see funding from the Europeans and funding from the Netherlands, they have got different requirements or different standards that they require. So when you are writing a budget for a grant proposal, you need to comply and follow the standards of the donor in question. So you have to ensure that you comply with the specified formats, the guidelines, and maintain organization's credibility and continued access to funding. So this statement that I've just posed of maintaining credibility and continued access to funding, uh, it's coming in to buttress the point that you have to create trust with the donor and the stakeholders so that you can be continuously funded in if you have built trust. Then there's issue also to do with eligibility and allowability within the grant proposal writing. So there are some grants that some organization won't be eligible to apply for. So when you are doing the grant proposal writing, it's not that you just apply for each and every grant that you see. They eligibility and allowability issues within those grants. Some of the grants they will specify countries to which they will fund. Some they will specify types of organization, for example, youth-led or women-led trusts or PVO. PVOs. So you need to read through those call for proposals to see if you can fit into such a grant. Sometimes we tend to waste our time applying for grants that we are not eligible for. So we need to read through and see if we can fit. Then moving on, we have got issues to do with audit and monitoring. So with our grants, obviously after we've implemented, after we've done with the project or even during the project, there are audits that needs to be carried out, and audited reports are then issued, which will act as references to other donors that you can or you are eligible and able to hold and implement a certain amount of money. Taking for instance, usually the grant ceiling or the money that you get awarded usually depends on the previous grants that you were able to acquit without issues. So as you continue to get grants, as you continue to get funds that are of bigger value, it will also leverage your chances of getting bigger amounts of money. So a close monitoring to finances is required within the organizations so that you maintain your reputation and keep on track when you are implementing a grant. Then budget monitoring and revision. Monitoring is an ongoing process. We continuously monitor tracking the actual expenditure against the budget. So this this slide is now speaking more to already an awarded grant, where we would now want to do the budget tracking, monitoring and revising the budget, which I think is not very much important when it comes to the to today's topic of grant proposal writing on budget. So I think we can skip to the next slide, which is the issues to do with working with the finance team. So when you are writing grant proposal and when you are doing the budget, it's not a one-man band. You need to have collaborations and effective communication with colleagues and stakeholders. You need to do a teamwork. Everyone should come on board. Why everyone should come on board? For example, the programs team are the ones that will do the writing of the proposal that will implement, whilst the finance team will then do the budget. So the two should marry. So there is need of teamwork. You don't need to divorce each other. You have to marry each other when it comes to the preparation of the budgets. Maybe the programs, they've got the know-how of the issues that are on ground, and the finance team are very good on numbers. So the two should marry so that we have coherence and a flowing budget that meets the programs. After the teamwork, we also need to do what we call, there's issue of roles and responsibilities. When we are writing or when we are doing budgeting, each and every member should understand his and her roles within the grant writing. We need to work as a team, but also taking into cognizance that if each and everyone, you've got a different role and different strength when it comes to the issues of writing and analyzing the budgets. Basically, those are the important issues that I had for you today, guys, when it comes to budgeting for grant proposal writing. I thank you. Let's move on to the conclusion. Basically, the issues that I've shared with you are the issues that I think they are of paramount importance when we are doing the grant proposal budget writing. This time now, I will leave it to the questions. I'm trying to go to the chat box to see and read the questions which are there. I'm trying to run down through. Thank you for the presentation. Can the training slides be shared? Yes, it will be shared. Yes, it will be shared. For those like me who faced challenges to register, it's just a reflection. Are there donors that fund the proposals to set up a CBO? Yes, responding to this question, are there donors that fund the proposal to set up a CBO? Yes. Why I'm saying yes, donors comes in different packages. Donors comes in different categories. Donors comes in different ways. You can have a businessman who can come in as a donor, who's interested in supporting a CBO, or else we can also have funders that need to fund your CBO. So I think with this one, you need to write a proposal and a budget for setting up your CBO so that you can look for prospective funders. Please, are you referring to any question about human rights grants, or also what do you mean by it is in line with my question about people with different sexual orientation? I can skip this one. CBO, community-based organizations, is fine. My question was daring and imaginary to understand trends or future realities. In essence, of course, associated get grants related to human rights furtherance and in the regard people of different orientation. I cannot respond to this. What are the key guidelines organizations should follow to be aligned for a type of grants? What are the key guidelines organizations should follow to be aligned for all type of grants? So basically, to my knowledge, there are no casting stone guidelines that organizations should follow to align with all types of grants. But as you apply, each donor has got his or her requirements that you need to adjust. So you need to keep on revising or editing your proposals to suit the requirements by each donor. They tend to differ. Sengon, how can associations be independent financially without seeking third parties, external donors? So basically, with associations, it differs with the type of association that you have. Some of the associations, they get their funding from subscriptions. But basically, to help you on this question, you need to be entrepreneurs. You need to come up with strategies or with sustainable projects. You said I meant NGOs. So basically, for NGOs, you need to establish once you get a grant, uh, if there are free funds or if there are other funds that you can get, I think it will be very important to also invest as an NGO in buildings, buying your own land. There are some grants that you can apply for capital assets like land, buildings, and so on. So for you to sustain, you can ride on those buildings. You can also need to do projects that are sustainable using free funds from donors or start projects that can generate money. With the donor terrain right now, it is very difficult to secure funds, and it has seen more organizations going down or closing because they fail to be sustainable. I don't know if I've answered to your question. It seems there are no more questions, so I thank you everyone for attending to this session. Let me hand over to Mr. Godwill. Thank you for the time. Over to you, Mr. Godwill. If there's anyone who need to unmute and have a voice responding to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ngoni. I think that was an amazing cap off for the presentations we've had in the course of these past 2 days. Romaric, I don't know if you would want to have any interventions so that I just come in at the end.
Please come again, Godwill. I didn't get it clearly, please.
Yes, I was asking if you would want to make any interventions right now, so I just come in at the end.
No interventions from my end. You just go ahead, Godwill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Romaric. Once more, Ngoni, thank you very much. And we do extend our appreciation to the rest of the facilitators who have contributed extensively to making these 2 days a success. I think the knowledge we've gathered from these 2 days is kind of very rich, how which we could spread it across more days. But hopefully, just as Riza hinted, we're looking forward to having more of such capacity building sessions, because though secondary to research, but capacity building remains a very, very central area of focus for us at the Conflict Lab, especially working with young people. Before I move forward, I just want to add a voice to one of the questions which I saw in the chat, which was centered around if funders do fund the creation of community-based organizations. But you get to understand too that it depends on the priorities of the funders. Just as we learned yesterday, that funds are not just given for free. Yeah, they have priorities which those funds are directed to. So, and it's very important that before we approach a funding institution, we should take our time to understand their priorities. Definitely, with the civic space increasingly shrinking, there are funders who are interested in kind of spurring up the creation of new CBOs. And I think they'll be very, very clear when it concerns that. But one thing too we should also take into consideration is, and I think Ngoni earlier mentioned this, it comes with credibility. Credibility is core to receiving a grant. And most of the times, funders will go with people who have established themselves for a while and who can provide a very, very clear track record of what they have been doing. And this is usually not the case for people who are just starting and people who are not well established. Yeah, so just in rare cases will we see CBO funders who are funding the creation of CBOs. But in those rare cases too, it's very, very possible to see them. So when we want to approach them, we should be very, very clear about as far as that is concerned. And I think it's also dangerous for external funders to fund the creation of a CBO. Why is that? Because I think looking at the funding ecosystem and looking at what foreign aid has caused for Africa, I think this debate is long settled, looking around the effectiveness of foreign aid on Africa. Africa is increasingly in need of ownership. Yeah, that's why in such a critical moment, CBOs and CSOs need to stand up so tall as far as local ownership is concerned. But if the very mission statement and the very foundation of a CBO or CSO is entirely designed by funding priorities of an external funders, I think we may not be going the right trajectory as far as local ownership is concerned. Yeah, because just look at writing grants. Ngoni mentioned something which I think I want to quickly reemphasize, which is very important. In such a critical moment where Africa is turning to the rescue, capturing CBOs, how can we rely on you for local ownership? It's very important that funds should not modify our mission statements. You get to see that some organizations have many different mission statements on their shelves. They pick the one which suits a particular fund. So we have many faces, we have many identities. And if we want to really speak so tall to the problems which are facing Africa, we must actually be very clear with what we want to achieve and who we are at all time. Irrespective of the fund that is available, we should have our identity in check. If we think our identity will be defined by the priorities of the funders, we may unconsciously be part of the problems we're trying to solve. So one thing we should write home with, we should go and define our mission statement. It should not be big. And one thing as a CBO, a CSO, whatever you present, you cannot solve every problem. I think that's one point where we get to find ourselves drowning so wide. We want to be everywhere. Okay, we want to be a human rights institution. We want to be a climate advocacy institution. We want to be a gender advocacy institution. We need to be well defined. And as defined as we are, funders should not define us. Yeah, they're just as re-echoing what Ngoni said. You check the eligibility criteria of the project. You tell yourself that this is not what you're into. Yeah, not necessarily you are not eligible. Don't make yourself so desperate, like I'm not eligible to apply. Like they are funding what I am not into. So I will look for who funds what I'm into. It will make you so much so much of a leader in the particular space you occupy. So those are just some key points I wanted to emphasize as far as the question that was asked is concerned. Away from that, I want to use this opportunity to appreciate everyone who have taken out time to be part of this session. My name is Mbul Godwill. I serve as the coordinator of the Conflict Lab Initiative. Yeah, so some people may be wondering what the Conflict Lab is all about. Yeah, so the Conflict Lab is more of a collaborative space where young people across Africa come together on a purely voluntary basis to share their expertise and kind of contribute to research, capacity building, and it's youth oriented. I know some of you who are being regular on our LinkedIn page, we do usually send out call for volunteers. Yeah, so we are composed of young people across Africa. Ngoni, for example, is from Zimbabwe. We have Cedric who is from Cameroon. We have Paul Madwane, who is from South Africa. Yeah, and we have Mohammed, who is from Egypt. So that is the space we are. Yeah, we bring in young people who have that like passion, and we believe strongly that though there is this conception about African youth that we are so much destructive in our making, but what we do in this space is we try to change such narrative by saying that young people can actually come together and constructively contribute to the sustainability and development of Africa, especially in areas of peace, security, and good governance. So we are focused mainly in two particular areas. And one, which is primary to what we do, is research, whereby we don't want, we use research as a medium whereby young people can actually lead change, and not just change which is based on opinion. Because if you look at the policy ecosystem of Africa, you get to realize that young people are very much disgruntled with what's happening, especially within governance. But we get to realize that they are always not very constructive enough to approach these problems. And one way we think this can be better off is through research and policy advocacy, whereby our advocacy campaigns are backed by science and research. Yeah, so research is core to what we do at the Conflict Lab. And Cedric, who is from Cameroon, is the lead of that particular unit. Under the unit, we have 3 research coordinators. Riza, who presented yesterday and today, happens to be one of our research coordinator, and she leads our peace and security portfolio, as well as conflict sensitivity and responsible business practices. And we have Lazarus from Zimbabwe, who leads our peace building and migration, as well as peace building and the media. Yeah, so we equally have Dr. PP, who is from Cameroon. He's more into governance, politics. Yeah, so that is what we do at the level of research. Upcoming, probably early or mid-June, we'll have a roundtable, which is a product of a research paper, and that is looking at rethinking African development, especially within the context of shrinking international aid. And yeah, so please, we will always feel free to come around our event, and we are creating a space for mutual impact. If you or your organization, you're organizing something, you think the Conflict Lab could be a partner or something you want us to add a voice to what you're doing, especially if it's youth-led, we'll be happy to lend our voice, our intellect, or probably be of help in whatever way we can. Yeah, so this brings us to the end of the 2 days capacity building training session on grant writing. And just as most of us within the Conflict Lab benefited so much from the knowledge that was shared in the course of these 2 days, we strongly believe that it's not been a waste of time for the rest of you who've joined us here on Zoom. and equally for the rest of you who are joining us via YouTube. Let's keep doing our little best to make Africa a better place in our respective corner. One thing we so much believe at the Conflict Lab is you cannot do it all, but the little you can do in your corner, make sure you do it so well. Yeah, okay, I see Ekale's hand up. I don't know if that's a proper pronunciation of your name. Yeah, please unmute your mic and let us hear from you.
Yes, thank you. So I had a question. I think it's in the chat box. If you have any affiliation in Kenya, maybe for some of us who want to volunteer in Conflict Club, on the Conflict Club.
Okay, principally the Conflict Lab is based in Cameroon. Yeah, but all our volunteers do join us virtually. Yeah, so we don't have offices around Africa, but we have representation around Africa where we have volunteers who work with us. Yeah, so the Conflict Lab is more of an African initiative, though based in Cameroon, but we have people working from home from across the continent. I don't know if that answers your question, Ekale.
Yeah, thank you.
But if you probably you're interested to be part of what we do in any regard, just quickly drop us an email. Probably we'll respond to you and see how possible it is.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Any other question, please, before we phase out of this? Feel free to unmute your mic and okay, in the absence of any question, I think this therefore brings us to the end of this session. It's of great interest to us that you go out and multiply the knowledge you've learned. We don't just want you to keep it to yourself. That's not the extent of impact we want to create. We so much, especially when it comes to capacity building, we so much believe in the multiplier effect. We believe that one person you train is a whole thousand of people you've unconsciously done so. So we believe that gathered here, we don't just have individuals who want to make it better. We have individuals who want to be ambassadors. So go out there, dish out this knowledge. Well, I think grant writing, we were so much interested in this because grant writing is just a way that you have the opportunity to in a very constructive manner contribute to community building. Yeah, so please go out there and make sure you have the impact. And we are very happy to see your testimonials on LinkedIn, how valuable this training was to you. Probably you on your own post you could mention us. We'll be happy to share that. And equally on the post that is associated to this particular event, we have a series of them. Feel free to comment and kind of share your feedback on how insightful this training was. And if you're organizing a similar training probably in future and you want us to learn voice, do well to reach out to us. Just as the programs coordinator Romaric said, in 2 weeks' time or before that time, we'll be reaching out to you all with your certificate. That's after you must have complied with the post training survey, because we want to because you remember before you joined us, we shared some kind of registration form whereby we're able to capture what it is you want to learn and how you're going to use it. Now you've learned, we should be able to capture what you're going to how well what you wanted to learn matches with what you've learned. So yeah, go and do exploit in your different communities. Thank you all. Bye bye.